we are so excited to welcome to the stage. So never did we think, watching the Olympics over the past decade, would we have the opportunity to interview an Olympic champion. In 2018, Tessa Virtue and her ice dance partner, Scott Moyer, became the most decorated figure skaters in Olympic history with 5 career medals, 3 gold and 2 silver. Tessa Virtue is a true Canadian icon, and we are beyond excited to welcome her to our virtual stage. Hello.
Thank you so much.
How are you? Oh, well, we're so happy that you're joining us here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. How are you two feeling? I mean, you're managing the chaos of the day so incredibly well. It's been wonderfully inspiring for so many, but how are you?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's going pretty smooth over here. I mean, it's our first live broadcast ever, so I feel like, it's under control.
It seems like it's been sailing. You look like naturals. I just want to be somehow getting like little bits of food or water to you through maybe coffee through the computer screen to make sure that you're nourished as this is happening.
Oh my God, you're the best. You read our mind. Amazing. Well, we are obviously so excited to chat to you today. Ange and I, for the longest time, have had, we've been business besties for a number of years, and we've had a small obsession about the impact of mindset, and especially for women in business. And so that's part of the reason that we're so excited to have you, on our virtual stage, and you're just someone that we truly, look up to. And our first question for you has a little bit to do with, where you're at today. So how has your life pivoted from being entirely focused on preparing for the Olympics and training, and now diving into all of your new endeavors?
Mm-hmm. It's been a difficult shift to navigate, one that I anticipated and expected and tried to prepare for. But the contrast between being so singularly focused on one goal and now feeling like I'm trying to tackle so many things at once has been significant, to say the least. I think, it was interesting. Yesterday I was chatting with, I was on a phone call with some business mentors as I'm navigating some new corporate space. And I was reflecting back on my notes after the call, and 2 things stood out to me. One of them said, find space to dream. And another said, leave room for the art of possibility. And it got me thinking, because I'm someone who wants a goal. I want a task. I want to know exactly what I'm working towards, because then I can structure a plan and make this, tangible, actionable path to accomplish a goal. And right now, instead, I'm being forced to trust my curiosity, trust my instincts, and just open myself up to learn. And it's a really beautiful stage to be in. It's a little foreign, it's a little scary, but I know that something will become clear. I mean, instead I'm setting smaller goals. So when we were training, the Olympics was the be-all, end-all, of course. But daily, weekly, monthly, seasonally, we had to set really manageable, attainable goals and set ourselves up for success. So I'm trying to apply that sort of structure to my life now, and whether that's with school or a brand partner, I'm really trying to focus on some of these smaller goals as I eventually craft what comes next in the big scheme of things.
Oh, I love that. And it's interesting from trying to, it's almost very symbolic of what's happening with the times right now. We had our earlier chat with Elizabeth Gilbert. We were talking about that, people usually function by aiming towards a very specific goal. And with this pandemic, there's no end date in mind. So the goals are kind of all over the place. So kind of seeing how you're creating, almost bite-sized tangible goals to keep moving yourself forward is a great way to look at it too. So thank you for sharing that with us. I love that.
Of course. Yeah. It becomes more about building your toolkit and adding to your skill set instead of, ticking things off a to-do list. And I think that's a powerful place to be.
Oh, I love that. So you come from a world where the stakes are incredibly high. The competition is fierce, and literally the entire world is watching. So when everything is on the line and you're in that high stress environment, mindset is such a key factor. So you and Scott have previously worked with a mental prep coach. So are there any key takeaways to that successful champion mindset that we can implement to conquering today's obstacles?
Certainly. I think when people think about sports psychology, the term visualization inevitably comes up. And we had a mentor, Marnie McBean, Olympic rower, for a while. And I remember one time she said to me, do you imagine yourself on top of the podium? And I said, yes, I visualize that every day. I picture the medal, singing "O Canada." That is so clear in my mind. That's what we're aiming for. And she said, you picture all the steps it will take to get there. And I'm not sure at the time I did. And so we shifted how we used and incorporated visualization to incorporate the gritty details, the daily grind, and all of the hard work that it would take to step on the podium. And that became part of the dream. So it wasn't just this idea of glitz and glamour. It was embracing the process and everything that it would take to get there. So that's one thing that comes to my mind. Preparation, I mean, the hard work is where you find the joy, but it's also where you find confidence, because in our case, we could step on the ice knowing that no stone was left unturned. But in the business world, if you can almost work backwards, like what could go wrong? What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? And how can I prepare myself to combat that? So no matter the circumstance, you're ready to adapt. You're ready to pause and pivot. You're ready to tackle anything. And that kind of preparation is irreplaceable. I mean, that is totally invaluable. And not only does that allow you to really embrace that kind of confidence, but it makes you feel like you've lived every kind of scenario before you really have. And I think a sort of a calm serenity might take over because you've thought through it. And one other thing, I mean, aside from really crafting and cultivating the right team of people around you, it's also embracing failure. A big shift for us when we started working with our mental prep coach was we had to stop trying to be perfect. And in our sport, perfection is the aim. And I think in today's culture and society, there's ever more stress placed upon that. But it's impossible. So somehow we have to alleviate that pressure and replace that word. For us, it was excellence. We just needed to strive for excellence. And we needed to be good, really good, consistently. And I can't tell you how just that mental shift, what a big role that played for us as we were, going for gold. And now even still in my life, as a self-proclaimed perfectionist, I admit how I've tried to reshape things in the way that I view and approach new tasks.
I think you said that. Well, you said so many things so beautifully, but I think so many people often do strive for perfection, and kind of reframing it in terms of excellence is a different way to look at it. I'm just curious because obviously you had, Scott Moyer at your side, and you guys were, doing all the mindset work and everything. Were you guys always on the same page in terms of what that definition of excellence meant? Or was it something that, kind of like evolved with the work you did with the mindset coach?
It's a great question. We wanted it in different ways. Scott was so driven, and he would get really worked up in a training session if we weren't achieving what he believed to be good enough, which was often, most of the time. And we really had to prioritize coming together, communicating what that meant for us, and just to get back to breaking things into manageable increments. I mean, when we took the ice in May of 2017, we couldn't expect to be in the kind of shape we would be February of 2018. So we had to be realistic about what does this particular training session lend us, and how does it propel us forward it's a building block, and we needed to constantly come back together. And in a way, I'm not sure what it's like for you two working together, but in a way it was really nice to have that partnership, because often when I was at this end of the spectrum, he was over here, and we could really meet in the middle and help each other through that. And I could be his confidence when he was doubting, or vice versa. So we really relied on that, and needed to, like I say, prioritize the partnership, and most importantly, the communication, especially in times of stress.
I love that. I think that Taryn and I can definitely relate to the, that balance there, and helping, lift one another up when there are those moments of, energetic leaks or whatever it may be. Definitely during the pandemic, especially, is, pushing through those, the self-doubt and the new information that comes at you of, what's going to happen next. But I think that there's a really unique thing that happens with partnership, where you kind of are each other's crutches in a positive way. And obviously that's exemplified to the highest degree with the way that you and Scott have, come out on top and become the most decorated skaters of all time. So it's definitely the example that we see. So that's pretty incredible.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we always thought we had coaches for a reason. We had people who could lend constructive criticism and feedback to us. We didn't want to coach one another. Instead, we really thought it was our job to bolster self-esteem and confidence on the ice. So, anyone else could tell me that I needed to bend my knees more, I needed to extend, I needed to do this better. And Scott was always the one saying, "You're doing great. No, you're perfect. This," and I would do that for him. Instead of piling on and coming down on one another, we always wanted to be that support to lift each other up. So I love that you two do that too, and you can see it in the way that you two talk and work off of each other. It's really cool to see.
Thank you. So being an Olympic athlete takes resilience. One of the themes that we talk about today: grit, hard work, and sacrifice. So can you share with us a time where you had to overcome a major obstacle?
Oh, it's a long list, like everyone's would be, but something. I mean, I was quite injured for a good chunk of our career. A chronic injury on my shins and calves, and had 2 surgeries for it. But I think where resilience came into play there was not just battling the pain, but more importantly, trying to adapt our training. So we got so regimented in thinking that it was a linear path to achieving a certain goal, in thinking that when we trained with the best in the world always, whether that was in Waterloo, in Michigan, or in Montreal, we trained with our biggest competitors. And we could see the system. We knew day in, day out how people worked. And suddenly, I couldn't train like that. My legs wouldn't allow it. And it was that notion of, okay, but how do we adapt? How do we come at this from a different angle and, find the same result, or maybe even be better, but not go about it in a conventional way? And that allowed us the freedom to really open our minds to a lot of different elements of ice dance. And whether that was, the scientific approach with our mechanics in skating, whether that was working more with acrobats from Cirque du Soleil to help with our lifts at a time when they were really lacking. Whatever it was, we just were always looking for that 1 or 2% difference maker. And, each season we would seek new resources and try to reinvent ourselves. But when you mention grit, I think those times when I look back at the obstacles we faced, they were the moments, not to sound too cheesy here, but they were the moments that fostered the most growth. Because we took the ice thinking, I'm not sure our competitors have been through this. I'm not sure that they have that strength and resilience to draw on just because they hadn't faced the adversity. And they did in their own right, not to negate that at all. But it became almost an ace of our sleeves. It became something that differentiated us. And Dana was saying before, find your unique voice. Maybe that's where our unique voice came. And it wasn't easy to listen to always, but eventually we realized that maybe it set us apart.
Mm. And isn't that so true? The struggles and the obstacles, and they truly do shape who you become. And that path is so different from everyone else. So that was beautifully said. And as you kind of walk into the next stage in your life, you're redefining success as you step into the world of entrepreneurship. We are so excited to hear about your newest projects.
Yes.
Well, first on the to-do list is my MBA. It's always been on my radar. Actually, I will admit law school's on my radar for a little while, and I met with the former dean of Ivy Business School, and at the end of our meeting, she just said, I think you need to be a little more creative. And this entrepreneurial spirit has burned brightly inside of me. I would say since that business switch was flicked in 2010 and we were sort of thrust into the corporate world in a new way, I was able to listen and learn and give in to that curiosity, for the past decade or so. And so I'm keen. At the center of it all is always empowering young girls and women, and so I'm seeking new ways to do so. But most importantly, with school and with hopefully some work things lining up, it's time that I put myself in a position to learn, and I'll be uncomfortable because I have zero workplace experience. My very first job interview was in 2014 after the Sochi Olympics. With the TV broadcasting company. And I remember thinking how strange it was that I had never really sat down and gone through that traditional job process. And I am now a little bit, but I just want to be, on the ground, getting my hands dirty in this corporate realm and learning about all the different facets of it so that when the time comes for me to hopefully launch my own thing, I feel like I'm coming at it with a more well-rounded perspective and with some knowledge and some, even just credibility, just the verbiage that I'll learn in school. And I never wanted to be that ice dancer that was offered some privileged opportunity. And I realized that I have been so lucky to have this platform, but I really want to earn it and build something. This vision of building something from the ground up is so clear in my mind. And, as that's starting to take shape, I'm more and more excited.
Oh, wow. Well, it's truly inspiring to see the foundational work that you want to put in as you get to this entrepreneurial space. And we are so excited to see what happens next with you. This is pretty incredible. So, yeah, we can't wait. We actually have a number of audience questions for you, and I want to make sure that we get to a lot of them. So we're going to dive right into questions if that's okay with you.
Yeah, bring it on.
So the first one, yeah. So the first question, Tessa, do you have any advice for overcoming the fear of failure when wanting to embark on a new goal or passion?
I think it's such a common fear. And for a while I would have said that it was my biggest, along with spiders. But the fact is that we are going to fail. It's inevitable and it's unavoidable. Failure is just a natural part of any worthwhile endeavor. So instead, I would try to just build it into your story, build a narrative around that where failure offers opportunity to reframe something, to grow, to learn, to evolve. Instead of, sort of that self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess, when you fear something, you often sort of subconsciously make it happen. And so I think instead, anchor yourself with that and embrace it. We used to practice failing. We used to practice falling on demand and getting back up and getting back into the program. Because we knew that, when the ice was perfect, when we were both healthy, when it was the right time of day, when our bodies were, peaking at the right time, that we could perform. but that's never the case. I mean, it's just not reality. So instead, we practice skating on really bad, rough, choppy ice. We fell and got up. We knew how to refocus in a moment. We tried to make it harder on ourselves so that, come time for competition, it was a walk in the park, So, just my advice, I guess, to that question would just be, it's okay. You're going to fail. You're going to fall. You're not alone. Find the right people who lift you up and support you along that process, but also use it to your advantage.
I really like how you framed the fact that you guys actually, would purposely put yourself in situations where you were experiencing that failure. And I think that's so cool. And kind of, obvious now that you say it, but just putting yourself in that situation, so much more better prepared for when, and it inevitably will happen, in the future. So that was so cool. One of the next audience questions that we have, and I'm specifically picking this one because I have 2 little girls as well. So I'm so curious to hear your answer. Tessa, my daughter adores you. What is your advice for those little girls trying to navigate this complicated world, specifically in the world of sport?
Oh, stick with it. First of all, it is hard, and sometimes it can be toxic, and sometimes you just want to walk away from it. But stick with it if you can, especially if you love it. I mean, there are so many different sports and activities to dive into, to try, and I encourage that. Sort of that well-rounded athleticism. I think that's so healthy. But find something you're passionate about and hold on to that feeling of why you enjoy it. In anything in life, there'll be drawbacks, and there'll be people who try to pull you down. There'll be criticism. But if you can hold on to the why of what it is that makes you happy, what it is that makes you excited to perform that sport or compete or race or whatever it is, that will carry you through. And I think, times when you do want to be open to the different voices, and you want the feedback, and you want to allow people into your space, but other times it's okay to put the blinders on and do something because you love it, and try to shut out the noise around you. And that's not easy, but I also think for parents with young kids, it's a great skill to nurture, and it's a great forum for kids to learn about resilience, about overcoming adversity, about teamwork, and about sometimes prioritizing yourself in the middle of all of it, if it's something that you love to do.
So beautifully said.
I love that. Another question. Tessa, as a competitor, how do you handle or deal with comparing yourself to others?
It's the way of the world now, isn't it? Especially as females, we're so often pitted against one another, in any kind of sphere. But I'm not sure why that's been a thing culturally that has to happen. That there, I've always kind of thought there was room for all of us. There's room for everyone. And in my sense, with competitors and the people that I was often being compared to, I thought, if they're up here and if I can sort of try to elevate them, then it will not only raise my performance, but if we ever have a chance to beat them, then, I think that speaks to a certain skill set even more. So it's really easy to get lost in that sense of comparison. My mom was always really good about that, because sometimes I would say, I wish my legs weren't so muscular. And she would say, but would you like to trade, if you're going to trade legs with so-and-so, do you want to trade everything? Like everything that comes with that person's life? And the answer is often no. So instead, it just became about embracing the things that made me unique and seeking that out in others, because I find that I'm drawn to people who are quirky and beautifully imperfect, and who really have a sense of comfort in their own skin. And I think when you can surround yourself with people who are like that, then you learn to be a little kinder to yourself in that. And it's okay. Like, I think it's great to look at someone and admire, their accomplishments, or, how they go about something, or something about their life. I think that's great because it can inspire you. But it's okay to have a different path and something that is entirely your own. And it's okay if the things that make you unique are also the things that make you feel beautiful. Like, I just think shifting that is something that's really important, especially for young girls. And I mean, I can't imagine navigating, youth and teenage years with social media now. But maybe that's why, as a network of females, especially, that, much like the one that you've created here, we can help support the next generation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's something that I know Ange and I care so much about, and our community really shares and resonates with that message. So, just being able to provide that impact for the next generation. And you are someone that, literally people around the world, but Canadians and young Canadian girls and Canadian girls like us just really, really look up to. So thank you so much for everything you've put out into the world. You're a truly human.
That's so kind. Thank you for the sweet words.
Amazing. Well, Tessa, it has been such a pleasure having you here this afternoon, to pick your brain and get that insight of a Olympic champion is something, like we said earlier, never would I have thought watching the Olympics and watching you on this that we get to interview you and ask you questions. And this is such a cool experience. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here and sharing your voice and your message with the entire community. We're just truly, truly grateful. So thank you for that. I'm feeling very motivated too. Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to join you today. And I'm so in awe of the community you've created and this platform with, your ability to share resources and insight and motivation. And, we can all learn from one another, and what you've done today and you will continue to do, is really, really beautiful and inspiring. So thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We can't wait to see what the next chapter looks like for you. We are going to be following along closely.
Thank you. Likewise. And I can't wait till we're all in the same room again. But,
yes. Also theme of the day. Can't wait to see everyone.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much,
Tessa.
Bye. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you.